Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. My name is Keaton Shaw and we're very pleased that you are joining us once more for the program on what is a day living on edge, I suppose, with all that is taking place. But before we give you details of that, let me introduce my co-host, my colleague. He's alongside me this morning, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. And yes, things don't seem too bad right now, but of course, schools for the most part are closed. There's not a lot of traffic in the roads. The weather yesterday was quick. The rains, the amount of water came. It did speak to what the Minister of Works and Transport was warning us about with regards to how fast it could come, and perhaps the timing is going to matter when these rains hit us for the high tide to potentially interrupt the drainage. But we now have to wait and see what the next experience is going to be today. So I'm glad that preemptive measures were taken place. The air bridge and sea bridge cancellations, that might be hard on some people because they're probably booked out for the rest of the week already, from what I understand.
They are very much
so that's an unfortunate situation, but prevention is better than a cure.
Certainly, well, proactive measures are being put in place all across the country, and we hope that you're doing the same this morning. But alongside Mr. Sean Michael Small and myself this morning, we're very pleased to have with us a formidable lineup. This is a conversation of excellence, and we're joined by people of excellence. Alongside Mr. Sean Michael Small, to his left, is the former President of the Senate, Mr. Timothy Hamel-Smith. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Morning, John.
Pleasure to have
Morning.
you.
Good to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here with us, sir. And alongside Mr. Hamel-Smith is the former Mayor of Port of Spain and the current Mayor of Blanchardshire. That is Mr. Louis Leesing. Good morning, Mr. Leesing.
Good morning, Keaton. I don't know how I allow you to pass with that thing about Blanchardshire.
Yeah, because how dare you limit it to Blanchardshire? It's this North Coast. North Coast Mayor.
Forgive me. But he's stationed in Blanchardshire.
Yes, exactly.
So,
That's the capital.
that's the capital. And with us via Zoom this morning is the former Minister of Finance, Attorney at Law and Intellect, Ms. Karen Nunes Teixeira. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning. You have a top of the line lineup this morning. I can see I'm keeping company with the usual stars, Sean and Keaton, but I see that they've amped it up a lot. The former President of our Republic, Timothy Hamel-Smith, and of course the Mayor of all mayors, and with us Louis Leesing, a man who needs no introduction at all.
Well, he goes by many names, Mr. Port of Spain, Mr. Marval, and this morning he's Mr. Louis Leesing. So we're very happy that everybody's joining us. But of course, the conversation this morning surrounds the selection of a new Commissioner of Police. And the Police Service Commission on the 9th of June issued a release explaining the process for being able to apply for the post of Commissioner of Police. And we do have that photo in relation to the job summary and the qualifications and necessary experience needed to apply for the post. You will be viewing that on your screen. And it is, let's just say, for the last 7 months, if this is what the Police Service Commission came up with in terms of their search for a new police commissioner, then you have to be wondering why it took so long. Exactly what were they thinking or doing within the last 7 months? And that is what the conversation surrounds us this morning. So an open question to the entire panel this morning. My co-host is with me, and to Mr. Louis Leesing, to Mr. Timothy Hamel-Smith, to Ms. Karen Nunes Teixeira, we always start with ladies first. Ms. Karen Nunes Teixeira, 7 months in the making. It's always been difficult. It seems that TNT has always found some difficulty in the search for a new Commissioner of Police, and in an organization that is supposed to be autonomous, you cannot help but have the perception that there is political interference, not just for this period of time, but for past commissioners as well. Your thoughts on this release by the Police Service Commission?
But I mean, very briefly, this is not to say you could look at it by itself. It is part of an ongoing, as I see it, imbroglio. And with regard to the advertisement that you put up on the screen, that was part of the new legal notice. The only thing I looked at the legal notice that had now been to some degree modified, And what I saw, there were two things that they did. One, that they required that for an advertisement be put in two daily newspapers 3 times for 1 week. That was a requirement that was added in. The other parts about the qualifications, that was there before. And the other part that I saw that they put in, which many people had criticized them for not doing in the first instance, was that sending the list of the Order of Merit list to the president, sending all of the names, what was she to do with them? So that they went back to a former legal notice which said that you send the first in order of merit, and then they have the debate, and then only after that has happened do we then go to the next one if necessary. Oh, and another thing they did add was that when the list is sent, the order of merit list, whoever is sent first out of the list, that their dossier containing their qualifications, and I don't know any information because I know that was there before, also be sent to the Parliament for its consideration. So there were some changes made to the notice. So I don't know if that would have, after all that has happened, I know that the public is looking at them very keenly, and they're very well aware that persons are looking to see where they have gone wrong, as they have in the past. And those are the things that I noticed in this new notice.
Well, Mr. Hammersmith, coming to you now, and the conversation surrounding qualifications and experience, a master's degree in a particular field that is associated with law enforcement and criminology, and then 15 years of increasing experience within law enforcement, considering that the role of a commissioner of police has become more and more important within recent decades, given our increasing crime rates across the board, all criminal activity. Is this satisfactory in terms of being able to select the most appropriate individual?
Yeah, so you started at the right point, Keaton. First of all, you need to look at the context in which we are. Have we got it right? Is crime out of control? And what do we do about it? Because the Commissioner of Police position is at the very head of it. And you need to really think out of the box. So if we confine ourselves merely to looking at what are the legal requirements, then we just got in nowhere. And nobody seems to have done a review of how we really need to approach this problem. My own view is that we should be doing not unlike the Army. You have 2 streams of entry into the police service in this instance. You can come in as a constable on the beat and work your way up, and that's great. But you should also allow for people who want to make policing a career where you enter as an officer. So that's just the starting point. You have it fundamentally wrong, and you set yourself up for not being able to have a police service which is well coordinated, well led, well managed, to take control of crime. What you need, as the Army did. So the Army sends its top martial law of officers out to get trained in an international academy at Sandhurst.
Yes.
You need in Trinidad and Tobago at least 10 police officers a year going out to an international academy for a couple of years to learn training, to learn police work, to learn investigation. Because where we fall down dramatically is in our detection of crime. Yes. So if you don't detect crime, then how are you going to get control of crime? And why are you not detecting crime? Is it simply because you are not capable? Or is it because we're turning a blind eye? Is it because police officers perhaps are too connected with those who are in crime? Because it amazes me that we said, that when we introduced anti-gang legislation, this was going to be the end of it all. Yes. Not one single charge have I seen successfully laid and people suffer the consequences of it. So we must have no gangs, is all I could conclude. Mm-hmm. how could we reach this stage, 10 years later, and not have a single successful charge laid under the anti-gang legislation? And then, so that really tells you what is happening. And unless we get hold of crime and control it, then we're spinning out of control.
Yes.
And how do you reverse that? Really, it starts with the head. So you're looking for the commissioner of police. But we're looking in a way where we merely tick some boxes and end up with whoever happens to fill those without rethinking the entire process, because I think it's wrong. And you can't start with a process that's wrong and expect to land up with something right. So we're going downhill fast. And somebody needs to sit down and revisit how we want to structure our police force. How are we going to engage a commissioner of police in a way, or the police as a whole, in a way that we have succession planning, in a way that people are trained to be able to take up that role, take up that mantle, and perform successfully. And it's as if we haven't done this, and yet it's staring us in the face. And so many decades have passed, and we've gone, down the slope.
Yes.
And we need to think out of the box and come up with something entirely different. So I don't care anything about these regulations and tell me what boxes you checked, because none of that will lead to a commissioner of police who has the competence, capability of turning around the crime situation.
Well, Mr. Leasing, that's why I come to you, because Mr. Hamel-Smith made very many points there, starting with the entry of police officers into the service. He spoke about the education and training of officers all the way up to the role of Commissioner of Police, as well as legislation and how it affects the police service. But it was all brought to one main point. The thought process seems to have it's been flawed. They haven't been able to get it right. Police Service Commission after Police Service Commission. Do you believe that with all the controversy that has shrouded the Police Service Commission within the last year, do you think that it is satisfactory now that we just merely have boxes, as Mr. Hamel-Smith stated, to just tick off in the search for a new police commissioner?
Keaton, I think we are off to a good start with this discussion in more ways than one. But for me, the question is the Police Service Commission capable to do what is required of them? That is the big question. Is the Police Service Commission the best group of minds and bodies and spirits that we can get to serve in that particular position? Or is the Police Service Commission a composition of people whom the political directorate felt strongly would, as it were, be a better and more responsive Police Service Commission than the previous one? I think where we are with this whole question of selection of people to do key performing jobs in this society requires us to become less political and more patriotic, more concerned about where the country will be when we put somebody in a job. My own feeling is that things are so bad now that I'm beginning to believe what I once used to rail against. There was a time people would say to me, that can't be fixed. Trinidad can't be fixed. And I would become angry because I genuinely believe Trinidad could be fixed. And now, as I grow older, I no longer believe that with the same passion. But let me say to you that this thing about the Commissioner of Police, when I read what has been requested of a police commissioner, it is not answering the questions in the short term to long term. And that is how people manage and lead organizations. What do we do to manage the growth of the organization in its infancy? What do we do to ensure that it goes? And then eventually, how can we make a quantum leap to where we want this organization to go? My feeling, and it's a strong feeling, is that maybe we need more than one commissioner of police at this time. Maybe we just need a commissioner of police for crime. Maybe we need a commissioner of police for administration, and so on and so forth. I have not given it the full thought process. But what I do know is that criteria that we've posted and that I have before me here this morning, this is not going to solve the problems of the Trinidad scenario. Mm-hmm. We in a bad way. And so the question at this time, given the rules of engagement that we are playing with, what should we be looking for? A crime fighter? Or should we be looking for a serious administrator who will in the long term give life to crime fighting, or in the short term place it on the front burner while he or she sets about reorganizing the police service to make it something that happens? I visited a number of police stations overseas. In fact, I remember when I was the mayor, I think I said it on this program already.
Yes.
Right. And I went to Boston. Mayor Louis Leasing Day in the city of Boston. I was a real celebrity. You don't know about that. And Tim, they treated me as, so one of the things is I visited the police. In police stations, you do not necessarily see police officers. You see administrative officers who are really civilians. They're not police officers. They may not be able to make an arrest, but certainly when you come to the station, they will process the arrest. Mm-hmm. Or if you come to the station, they can treat with matters. This country has more police officers per capita than many countries in the world, big countries. Boston at that time had 2,000 police officers. How many we have?
I believe well over that number,
Yeah,
just
so.
for the field. Just that might be
we
two
probably
shifts
have
or a shift.
about 5,000 police officers. The question is, how many are available to the state on any given day? And that I know because when I became mayor of Port of Spain, although we had 107 people at that time on the head count, at any given period, we didn't have 50% of that available to us, to the city. People were on long leave. People went away and they ain't come back. But they were on the system. And so I'm saying to you, the problem is not in the office of the police commissioner. If we had a good chairman of the National Security Council, if we had a good chief magistrate, a good chief justice, a good DPP, who were all performing brilliantly, the focus on the commissioner of police would have become less. But precisely because all those offices are just performing, I ain't saying performing good. It is ever since I was born and I was conscious of things in this country, that's a long time back, I have been hearing the office of the DPP crying, I don't have enough staff. Tim, what is your view on that? How long you remember that being an issue? I don't have enough staff. So the DPP office, which is a very, very important office in the chain of command, does not have the resources to do what he or she has to do. How can we ever expect the police to be performing well? Try and remember that.
So I come to my co-host now, Sean. The genesis of the arguments put forward by Ms. Karen Nunes-Teixeira, Mr. Timothy Hamel-Smith, and Mr. Louis Leasing, you can argue is a quote from Mr. Leasing, the appointments of individuals to these higher offices, they should no longer be political, but rather patriotic. And when he spoke mainly of the criminal justice system and mentioning the DPP, the judiciary, and the Chief Justice, and we're speaking specifically on the Commissioner of Police, that often is the case.
So one of the problems with trying to get things to be patriotic is the foundation is the politics of the nation, the voting public. How do they look to choosing and selecting their candidates, voting in general elections. It's the whole enchilada. This is merely a symptom. The symptom is, what is the Police Service Commission doing? What is going wrong with the TTPS? Well, you could say that about a lot of things. Now, we're not necessarily here to break down the entire enchilada, so we'll keep the focus on the TTPS. Because, as Mr. Lee Singh said, you have issues across the board. Well, we have to start somewhere. So today, we're starting with this. The idea of the police service having to modernize itself is very real. The service recognizes that. We've spoken to a media ambassador both on and off air. You could tell that there are a lot of different things that the service is concerned with that is not going well for the service. And the question, of course, now is to what extent are we missing that substantive police commissioner? Because the acting is also a deputy. So I'll always say he has to do his job and he has to do the acting job. And something's going to suffer. More importantly, is he the best person for the job? We've seen this lame duck scenario before with acting Commissioner Stephen Williams for however many years he was forced into that role. But the idea, I think, that at least Mr. Hammersmith and Mr. Lee Singh were pointing out, or were pushing for, is just trying to continue as how we've been going. And I say this all the time, business as usual thinking. But we can't afford business as usual thinking. We can't afford it in the energy sector. We can't afford it in the education system because we don't have the money. So the DPP complains about resources. The last commissioner complained about resources. But then also, okay, right, we say the government is short on money. We could take them to task for how they manage what they have. So if the police service is short on resources because the government doesn't have much to give them, they have all of these problems. As crimes get more sophisticated, they have to try to keep up with that, but they still have problems from yesterday that they have not fixed. It's all the more reason why we need more exceptional people as opposed to, well, he's next in line in seniority. Well, he's good enough. Well, good enough is more or less what gets us with regards to a lot of our problems, because what we think is good enough is really just what we've inherited. But as our bureaucracy, our society, technology, the demands of all of these things become more and more, we can't use the same level of thinking that we used to use 50 years ago when things were a lot less sophisticated. You had a lot less problems. You had a lot less people just having to deal. That adds complication to the scenario. And then on top of that, COVID, recovery, cost of food going up. We see the effects of that. So it's adding more to the strain. All of the crimes they're all crimes. Robberies, they're increasing. And we still have the same level of resources not even that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Karen, just before we go to your point, we do have to take a commercial break, and I must apologize.
Okay,
but we will come back
make a point
right after
side.
that. But very quickly, I'll let you know that if policing in Trinidad and Tobago is archaic in nature, then you cannot expect a modernization by just incorporating new technology. You see, at the end of the day, if you do not have critical and strategic thinking minds within the service, then are we really progressing? At the end of the day, we're just spinning top in mud, aren't we? So, this is where we'll pause on the discussion. For now, we will take a break, and when we return, we will return with Ms. Karen Nunes to share his point. Stay tuned to the program.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
So, Simone, in these times, things are very difficult. Life has changed dramatically.
Many people have experienced mental health issues for the first time. So people who have just managed to keep anxiety at bay are experiencing a lot of anxiety now.
I am talking with another one of the major pillars of the women's senior national team. Her name is Ria Belgrave. She's actually center defense. Ria is now part again of the CONCACAF preparation for the World Cup 2023. What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out, not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
The weather may be depressing, the topic this morning may be depressing, but the conversation is certainly invigorating and stimulating. Before we had to cut to the commercial break, Karen, I must apologize to you, but to the point that you were going to make.
No, the point I was going to make is that it seems to me that the ad is intended to leave out persons who are not police officers, because I looked up the meaning of law enforcement, which is a rather vaguish term.
Yes.
But it seemed only to apply to persons who were involved in fighting crime, criminal activity. So by that very fact, it seemed that certain persons are not encouraged to apply, and which then continues what has been happening, the fact that we are where we are today with no police commissioner. The other point, really, to speak to what Tim Hammersmith had to say is, I'm not so sure it's the quality of the electors. Quality of the police officers. Many of them are trained as lawyers. Many of them have shown their capacity. In fact, many of them have come through the Hewering Law School and have shown their capacity intellectually. I think the problem is the other problem, and which add to it, the fact that we do have a proper DNA, the fact that the scientific support systems are not there, the fact that we do not have the right, because you can have as many qualifications as you want, but if you have corruption in the society, and on that point, I was looking at CSO figures, and their last figures, if I can recall, they had 36,000 crimes, but that didn't include any murders, it included everything. But what was at the end of it, there was a detection, and then there was the part where they were actually in prison. They had conviction. And out of 36,000, only about 1,000 had actually reached conviction. So that tells you a sad story. And the last point I want to make is that I have always been the one and will continue to say that you cannot expect the DPP, which is the only arm of government charged with responsibility with dealing with crime, and except at the magistrates court level, but even at that point, they might send a police, an attorney, depending on the nature of the matter. that we really need to do something about funding and ensuring that the DPP department has a full cadre of lawyers, which other departments happen to have, by the way.
Mr. Hamel-Smith, returning to you and building on what Ms. Nunes Teixeira would have just mentioned, it really sinks to the entire conversation of the fact that there is a lack of resources, there is a lack of financing, and therefore we're seeing shortfalls in almost every entity that revolves around the criminal justice system. Focusing on the Police Service Commission and the Commissioner of Police, two questions. The first one is, we have seen over the years Commissioner of Police acting in the role for many years without a permanent appointment. Does that speak to the level of confidence that those at the helm have within our police service and within the individuals being able to fill that role? And the second part is, to everything that has been mentioned, do you think the lack of a strategic and comprehensive crime plan has also affected the selection of a person to fill that role?
So what I understand is that we need to look at the whole criminal justice system in a holistic way. Mm-hmm. All right, so we've isolated the police force and are looking at one person and the engagement of one person to take on without looking at the wider society. Karen mentioned, for instance, corruption just now. My personal view is, in fact, corruption is at the heart of the problem we have in Trinidad and Tobago. Unless you could get a handle on corruption, everything else, whether it's the DPP's office, whether it's the police service itself, whether it's the service that we get from the public service, is going to diminish tremendously. And how do we get a handle on corruption? Of course, you have on the one hand legislation. So you have procurement legislation, which was supposed to be a very important component of fighting corruption. And you have party financing legislation, which has not come on yet. So one has been, to my mind, scuttled, quite frankly, in two ways. One, because you reduce the legislative powers within the procurement legislation. And two, of course, we're finding out that you can't implement it because nobody knows what to do. And why does nobody know what to do? Because they haven't been trained. It's back to training. And if you look at the question of corruption, I do not think that a local person, it's a small community, everybody knows somebody who knows somebody. Mm-hmm. And therefore, unless you get an independent special prosecutor, in my view, with resources to have forensic investigators available to him or her, you will never get a handle on corruption. And if you don't get a handle on corruption, you can't get a handle on violent crime. And you cannot get a handle on what's happening in the lack of service in the public service. So it is the essence of our problem here in Trinidad and Tobago. Corruption lies at the heart of it. And that's why Lee Kuan Yew would say, unless you can handle that at the very source, at the very beginning, you will never make it as a country. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we have to reverse everything that we have done to tackle corruption at the very source, at the very beginning. And that will not happen as we have presently constructed the criminal justice system. Nothing less, to my mind, of a special prosecutor who is not tied in any way to the society by way of knowing people. So yes, he has to come from an external source, and he has to have access to forensic investigators. Now we've started something down that route. You'll notice recently they've engaged a firm in order to provide forensic investigators and leadership. Unfortunately, we've allowed that to come under political control. I mean, that's the most horrible thing you could do. So you've corrupted the very thing that you wanted to get a handle on corruption on. This special prosecutor must be independent of that. And yes, perhaps a small country cannot have the resources of the metropolis. But we can engage those resources, and yes, it costs money. I'm not suggesting it costs a little. I am saying to you, unless you get a handle on corruption, nothing else will work in Trinidad and Tobago. And we need to focus on that and get a handle on that, and then we will be able to get a handle on all the other things that are not, because I believe we have the potential. And that potential is being stifled because corruption is endemic. It runs from top to bottom, and we have to control that. Failure to do that means we will continue to go downhill, backwards.
Yes. So you're saying that it will cost a lot of money, but think about the money that it will save as well.
Exactly. You have to change the culture of society, quite frankly.
And you know, Mr. Lee Singh, to ask you very bluntly, if we have given the power to those in charge of fighting corruption, to the ones themselves who may be involved in corrupt practices, exactly how is it that, one, we can call any institution independent, if that may be the case, and two, who do we turn to? Because if we're trying to tackle the heart, the source of most criminal activity in Trinidad and Tobago, which is corruption, those who are in charge of tackling corruption, if they themselves are corrupt, what next for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago?
Keaton, I don't want to stray too much, but I would say this to you, and as I'm following Tim in his line of argument. What are the crimes of mind we have in Trinidad? Think about it. What are the things that occupy us? In recent months, for example, we have dealt with the children's issues and the children's homes. We have continued to deal with murder, which is also largely driven by young people killing one another, young people breaking into people's homes and murdering them, and so on and so forth. We've had domestic violence, which a fair share of young people are involved in. Hold-ups, house break-ins, all young people crimes. White-collar crimes or corruption are adult crimes in this society. Procurement fraud, which is white-collar and corruption, are adult crimes in this society. So we have two sets of criminals in this country, young criminals and old criminals. The old criminals dominate that category of corruption and what have you. And it's strange that we're talking about this when particularly yesterday the Privy Council gave a major pronouncement on what is perceived or alleged was white-collar crime. It has been in our faces what was going on in Miami. Man gone to jail, but we still talking about whether people should be brought to trial. This is what this society is all about. I started to say to you that if we had a good minister of a good National Security Council chairman, if we had a good national security minister, we had a good chief justice, we had a good chief magistrate, we could settle for a mediocre police commissioner, because then things would work. And those above would say to the police commissioner, I know your office is independent, and these things do happen in democracies where there are divisions of responsibilities.
But sir, isn't that basically what we're doing now, where we keep settling for mediocrity?
Well, let me put it this way. We are not settling for that, because I don't know Timothy Hamilton Smith wants that. I don't know Karen Teixeira Nunez wants that. And I certainly have never advocated for that. I will not accept it. And I will speak openly about it. If the magistracy and the judiciary is not delivering in this country, the man to be held accountable is the Chief Justice. If the magistracy is not performing well, the person to be held accountable is both the Chief Magistrate and the Chief Justice. If the court system and the police system is not working well, I am not saying it's only the police commissioner. I want to know what is the role of the DPP in that. and then you begin to understand the loops. Everything interferes and impacts with each other in this society, in any society. It is only in Trinidad and Tobago, because we have been doing and studying the wrong sciences, and the wrong people are ending up in our parliaments and in key positions. They have not pursued the discipline that will allow them to see how things move from one stage to another. And we are now confronted with a situation where we're looking for a commissioner of police and hoping that that person, God rest, whoever get that job, I'm telling you, come and see me. I will give you free consultation, because the answers will never be found in the office of the police commissioner. When you do that, what are you doing to forestall the increase in bandits? For 2 years, thousands of children have not gone to school in this country at the vulnerable ages of 14 to 16. Thousands. They did not go to school because their parents could not afford the equipment. I've been saying this, and I have not seen a study by the ministry or the government which says to me, Leasing, you're wrong. All of you who have been saying that you're wrong, it's only 10 people didn't go to school. But they can't say that. And I'm saying to you, these 14 to 16-year-olds have nothing to do, because they will not amount to anything in life, because they are not going through the system that you people have designed for us. I want to know, why isn't there national service running to assist the police commissioner? I want to know, why aren't we developing after-school care centers to assist the office of the commissioner, to assist the office of the judiciary, to assist the offices of the Minister of National Security, and so forth. These things loop. It is cause and effect. And so today, as we're talking police commissioner, I want to put these things on the agenda for discussion. Because I ain't see nowhere in this notice a police commissioner who will come into office with an understanding that those young fellas out there, who every time a car breaks down on the Beetham Highway, they strip it. I ain't seen a police commissioner criteria for that. And my feeling is that that will only begin to happen when the overall state begins to understand its responsibilities. I would say to you this morning that if we want to look for a good commissioner, this country has got to establish an officer college. That is something that Lee Kuan Yew brought to life very early in his period. I know people keep saying Lee Kuan Yew, but in many other countries, they have other institutions that begin to prepare people for senior. Tim talked about it in the Army, and that is true. But I feel Trinidad and Tobago have enough brilliant minds to prepare people for high office. And people must not, as it will, be given high office in this country, either electorally or by appointment, unless they have graduated from the officer college. Because if you can't hope to take eggs, break the shells, put it in a bowl, and feel you're going to get macaroni pie. You have to have other ingredients. You have to beat it, and so on and so forth. My friends, I want to say to you all, this criteria will not solve our problems. This Police Service Commission is incapable of giving to this country what it requires at this time. I remember well when they were all saying, listen, well, we have found the man. He was just one of the people. I was like John the Baptist. I was just there in the wilderness. I was saying, what man? The only man to find is Jesus Christ, and he ain't no Jesus Christ. I said that very early.
Well, Mr. Sean Michael Small, a lot to really build upon, but I think really what we've heard is that the mediocrity that we've been fed and unfortunately have had to settle for is a mockery of our situation and reality here in Trinidad and Tobago.
We have an interesting phenomenon. I don't think it's unique to TNT, but the phenomenon is basically that brilliant people don't seek public service, right? We even have an example, one of the young men on our show, former youth parliamentarian, that basically says, I don't know if I want to go into that, that I'm not cut out for that. Because it is difficult for brilliant people to give up Yes, some of us might have the call to serve, but it's hard to carry the weight of the hopes and dreams of a nation up the mountain that is TNT corruption. It is hard to do that because oftentimes you feel like you're the only one doing it. And the TTPS is but one system responsible for dealing with crime. We have problems with the education system, as Louis pointed out, as a lot of stakeholders have pointed out, with regards to opportunities for young men to not seek crime. But gangs, that's one thing. What about corruption, as Mr. Hammersmith pointed out? Because, you know, the corruption will just point at the gangs. Hey, all this violent crime is the gangs. All of the murders are the gangs. All of our problems with crime is that. But he's right, the corruption now is at the heart of it. The corruption undermines the education system, undermines ease of doing business, undermines the economy. And with regards to a police commissioner, where does he come into that? Well, when is the last time we've had a police commissioner that had the cojones to go after anybody of serious weight? Karen has brought it up multiple times, the drug lords, the drugs, not just packets of marijuana, not just 100 guns when the TTPS is saying, well, we need to get rid of 10,000 guns or 20,000 guns for the year for us to feel like we accomplished something. What about a major white-collar arrest? It's reached the point now where we get political scandals with no arrests. With no arrest, Marlene McDonald is the first arrest that I could think of in a long time. And that is kind of like a footnote in society for most people. Nothing is really coming out of it. The corruption undermines everything. It allows the rot to continue to fester. So there's many different places you could start. You could start with politics. You could start with political activists. You could start with the TTPS police commissioner. The problem, of course, is the police service commissioner independent? I have doubts of that. Will the police commissioner be independent? I have doubts for that too. I think this is one area where the government, you know, basically spite themselves, shot themselves in the foot. Because at the very least, you might not like him, but you could have touted the last guy as being independent if you could have figured out a balance point. But that was not meant to be. Can't cry over spilled milk. But who do we have else? Who else do we have? We have maybe one or two guys, and if they're not good enough, then we have nobody else for that job.
Well, one or two guys on paper.
We have one, exactly. And I think the point that Mr. Hammersmith was making, we need to stop thinking, oh, we're not good enough, why we have to seek outside. Well, two things. One, we're not large enough to enjoy that separation in our society, where somebody from a different part will be independent and objective and unbiased, and we could bring them in. We're too small. And it is the size that makes seeking somebody outside to be independent something that we always have to consider. Well, not that we have any qualitative deficiencies in our individuals.
We've always been small. We will continue to remain
right,
small.
but as the challenges continue to grow and corruption continues to grow, New York City, or I think Flint, Michigan, or a lot of these other places that had systemic problems in their bureaucracy, they ultimately had the backstop that was the federal government of the United States. If you have a problem in London, you have the national government, right? If you have a problem in a city in Germany, you have the federal government there as well. We don't have that. Our national government is technically, population-wise, is of the level of, is to some extent smaller than the government of New York City. So we don't have a backstop at that level. All of the local corruption at the end of the day is, for all intents and purposes, national. There's no separation there. So for us to get somebody to clean up these things, if we want somebody independent, we might need to bite the bullet. We had a foreign police commissioner. He wanted to do things. Corruption in the police service drove him away.
Mr. University, we have about 4 minutes left before we have to break on the news. So a minute for each individual on the panel. A very simple question put forward. Is the role of a police commissioner too much for one individual to handle? We've heard from Mr. Hammersmith saying that there needs to be an independent office in order to prosecute white-collar crime. We've heard from Mr. Leasing, who's indicated that there needs to be a police commissioner for various parts within the police service. So that leads me to my question. Is it too much for one individual to handle?
Are you asking me this?
Yes.
Well, I think I would go with what Mr. Hammer-Smith said. And the corruption is endemic, and corruption is a nice way of saying that it is so widespread in society that even if one person were to try to take it on, I think they would be very much frustrated. I, for one, for example, and one of the reasons I would not want to go into government, because I know that if I were to go into government, there are so many agendas or agendae, so many systems put in place that you will be frustrated. There's so much corruption in the system that you may not even be aware of. So let us not fool ourselves. And when, with all due respect to the former mayor, you cannot separate the white-collar crime from the crime that you're talking about, the young men, because those young men are getting unlicensed guns, and those young men are part of gangs, and those young men are the foot soldiers for the white-collar crime, who are sitting in their homes, and you know that is true, and we all know it is true. They are the symptoms of the underlying problem. So as Mr. Hammer-Smith says, and the size is not the issue. It is a question of and the intelligence and education is not the issue. You can have very brilliant people at the top, but if you have persons who are corrupted either by way of position, power, money, even fear, because they could have fear for themselves, fear for their family, fear for which they're very well aware of. And we all know that. When I made my statement I made, from which I have not made any more statements, the number of persons who sent me messages telling me to be careful. Why are you telling me to be careful if this country not corrupt? Why are you telling me that I have to worry about what I say because I might end up in difficulties? So that alone tells you the extent and how deep this corruption is in this country. And until we can willing to solve that, which I don't think we are, all let's talk about the DPP, police academy. America has a police academy, doesn't it? How much incidents do we have with America with black police, young black men with their hands up in the air and being shot? How many? Nearly every day you read about it. And by the way, when what's his name, Giuliani, who has completely destroyed his reputation, went into New York City and cleaned it up, right? Look what he has done to his reputation. At what price did he do it? So let us not fool ourselves. So in conclusion, I agree with what Mr. Hammer-Smith has said, that unless we are prepared to deal with the root, we are wasting time. And secondly, with regard to the separation between the little boys and the white collar, they are both interconnected, and the little boys would not be there if the big boys were not there. And the big boys are there because those who are in charge in this country are deeply corrupt.
Well, as we conclude the first hour of our conversation here, we'll invite you after the 9 o'clock news to call in on the program and join us this morning to have your opinions and thoughts heard. We are joined, of course, by the former Mayor of Port of Spain, Mr. Louis Leasing, the former President of the Senate, Mr. Timothy Hammer-Smith, the former Minister of Finance and Attorney at Law, Ms. Karen Nunes-Teixeira, and just Mr. Sean Michael Small, and just Mr. Keaton Shaw.
But continue to include yourself.
But
just Mr. Keaton.
Just Mr. Keaton.
I think this morning we should ask our viewers whatever you want to bring up. You don't necessarily have to bring up the same talk points or speak on the same points that we have all spoken up. But once it ties back to the common issue, which begins at choosing a police commissioner.
And ladies and gentlemen, as we break for news in the hour, I will just alter the phrase that Karen mentioned. That is when she said, let us not fool ourselves. My take on it is, let us not continue to fool ourselves. We break for news on the hour.
Seven is out. All day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Is it politics? What is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out, not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the Content Capital. We're joined this morning by the former President of the Senate, Mr. Timothy Amelsmith, the former Mayor of Port Isabine, and the current Mayor of Blanchardshires, Mr. Louis Lee Singh, and of course the former Minister of Finance, Ms. Karen Nunes Teixeira. Sean Michael Small, I guess we're very lucky to be hosting this program this morning.
Yes, we're batting way out of our crease, you know, we're flying way too close to the sun, you know, next thing you know, the wings might melt and might drop in the sea. But
we're being educated.
Exactly,
you know,
exactly.
We're learning this morning. And so you, the viewer, are open and free to make your contributions. We only ask you to be respectful of others and in sharing your opinion, also be mindful of the time. The numbers are on your screen. We do have a caller on the line with us from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. I'm so happy to see the slate that you have there. Good morning to everybody.
Morning.
And this is what we really want in the country today, because we have the people who know the truth, what the hard truth, and you see, just like how the man could come out and say that corruption, that is the key. Once we have that, and it's in the offices, the big offices that play the game, we're not going nowhere, no. Or you could come every day and talk. Once we don't deal with this and deal with the matter, we're not going nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. The caller does have a point, though. I mean, we can have as many various conversations and cover as many topics as possible. Does that necessarily solve the issue? But it goes to show, though, the caliber of mindsets and thinking that we have in Trinidad and how much we actually do have that knowledge. We do have the individuals that could lead. Unfortunately, well, it goes back to what we said. We cannot continue to fool ourselves, can we? The mindsets in Trinidad, I have always thought to myself, especially when I was in university, that what I saw amongst the student population was brilliant. The way that they thought in terms of the critical thinking and strategic thinking, their presentation in terms of the way they spoke and their analysis. And unfortunately, when I graduated, because I did political science, and I saw individuals go off into their own fields, I realized that a lot of them were just lost. They had
the real world.
Yeah, they had exactly. They had no idea what to do next and no idea where to go. And maybe that's part of the problem as well. But we have a caller on the line with us from Tobago. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning,
you're live.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, you're live.
Hi, what's going on here?
You're on the air, sir.
Yes, good morning.
You're on the air. Good morning.
We can hear you.
Why nothing, boy? I ain't know that at all.
All right, we'll call it.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Could you hear us?
Could we take the next caller?
Okay,
All right.
we'll have to take
Caller,
the next caller.
I do
Call us
apologize. Call us back. We have a caller on the line with us from San Juan. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, am I on?
Yes, you're on here.
Hi, yes. I want to totally agree with Mrs. Karen Teixeira, Louis Singh, and the other one.
Mr. Hamel-Smith.
You all hearing me, right?
Yes, we are. We're hearing you.
And Mr.
Yeah,
Hamel-Smith.
I am actually retired, but I was involved in public service. And I'm telling you, it was a challenge for 36 years to enforce laws.
Hello, caller. Could you hear us?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Keep going.
Don't pay attention to your television. You can just listen to us through the phone, but we can hear you.
Because the thing is, the politics interfered with everything and the who know who, and in this kind of situation. So the white collar crime is on the who know who, and then when it's like this. The guy who steals a car, or the thug who steals a car, where does he fence it off? Nobody's dealing with the person who he fenced it off, chopping it up, and selling the parts.
Yes.
So you can't deal with one aspect of crime and leave the other. And we have been trying to leave the white-collar crime for the past 50 years untouched. So much so that people actually boast who they know where and who they know this one in license office and they know this one here and this one here, and they get away. It's like like run-of-the-mill kind of situation, and we need some people there with the political will to really enforce laws in Trinidad across the board.
Yes.
Not just people define law, contravention of laws depending on which political group you belong to. And that should never happen, or which social group you belong to, and that should never happen. It should be across the board. If you could get a commissioner like that, we probably had one, and he paid the price for it. But I mean, this is the reality in small societies. If you could get people like that, that's the only way we're going to solve the problem.
Well, thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much for your point. Gentleman, lady, this caller says he worked in the public service for many years.
36 years.
And it was very difficult to enforce laws simply due to political interference. how often do we hear that?
Yeah. And therefore they're totally frustrated. Isn't that really what it is? And therefore the reflection of this service that we do receive is reflects back on the frustration that the people on the line are experiencing. It's a lot of work we have ahead of us to do.
And
you have to clean the stable, chop off the head.
Wow.
What Mr. Hammersmith is making is that is at that level. And that is at level. So you have to imagine that kind of white collar crime you're talking about at that level goes right up the totem pole and is responsible for the unlicensed guns and the robberies and the crime that we see played out on our streets. There's a connection, not a disconnection. They're directly related to each other.
I agree.
And let me make a point, because it is in sync with what this young gentleman is saying. There was a time in this country when the office of the permanent secretary in a ministry was just as powerful, if not more important, powerful than a cabinet minister.
Mm-hmm.
Such permanent secretaries instructed by way of advice. They would say, I would advise you, Mr. Minister, you cannot do so and so. We don't have that now. And so, we can talk all what we want. Is it that the people, the permanent secretaries of yesteryear, or the foundation permanent secretaries were better informed and more educated? No, it isn't that. It is that they inherited a value system which they understood and rigidly developed on. We have not done that. We need an officer
They're
college.
undermined right now. You could transfer them out. They're no longer effectively permanent.
We have a caller on the line with us from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Morning to you, brilliant people.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
I just want to say that you have a panel there that can run this country. I admire all of you all there. You speak things that should be happening in this country. There's no honesty in this country anymore. And you people remind me of growing up in my young days. And Mr. Hammersmith, I respect you a lot, as Mr. Louis is saying, and Karen Sierra. I only hope that by God's grace you all can take and make some progress to help this country go forward. This country is corrupt from even in my younger days growing up. The corruption, as you know, everything I had to get, I had to bribe somebody, and I never intended it, nor did my father. But I salute you all, and you all keep on doing a great job that this channel is, and you're doing a great service to this country. Thank you, and good morning, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you very much, caller. Always a pleasure
what a
hearing from you.
gentleman.
And please, I know that you haven't been well, but keep well and keep safe during the next couple of days with this storm that is ahead of us. That caller spoke very much of hope. He saw a panel and he spoke very much of hope to save, I suppose, Trinidad and Tobago. But how do we now share that hope with those who have lost trust, with those who have lost confidence, with those that have no idea which direction to turn to next?
So how can we do it without change? Really? I mean, if you continue to have the same people over and over, what you can expect is the same result.
Which is insanity.
Well, which is Albert Einstein's
definition of
insanity as a
insanity.
physicist. But he makes a point. He makes a point.
We have a caller.
I think you have to continue to send the message, because if you realize that any government or tyranny or whatever anti-democracy or even democratic institutions, the way that they have been able to get their message across is by repetition. And that is why Trump was successful with his message. That's why Obama was successful. Probably why Stalin was successful. Maybe why Hitler was successful.
A lot of
All examples, but they
names on
all
that
say the
list there,
same
Karen.
thing. No, because the point I want to make is you can't stop repeating. You can't stop, because the time you do that, you have lost.
I'm glad that the caller, you recognize it, had a sense of hope.
Yes.
Because that is what that's what Karen is saying. How do you bring hope across to people? But by in fact repeating what we're doing here today throughout the country.
Very much
and
so.
galvanizing the people for change.
Well, we do have a caller on the line with us from Chagonas. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
I guess it's time to spit in the wind again. Because I have told you on a number of occasions that crime, poor transport, flooding, and these things are not inherent problems. They are the consequence of our problem. It is a matter of breakdown of law and order. As I explained, the role of the annual administrative report, where a minister is put in each ministry to ensure they enforce the law. And the result of what they do is supposed to be put up in our annual report. Dr. Rowley criticized the former Prime Minister Bissessar for being 4 years out of date in annual administrative reports. Now he is 7 years late. How can we run a country like that unless we get back to that fundamental problem and have every government ministry reviewing their position, document it, and having it put to the Parliament every year? We will never solve this problem. And the police have been the hardest, because the proper system to get a commissioner of police is somebody who goes through the ranks and have learned at each step what he's supposed to do, and that have been destroyed, and that the permanent secretary no longer have any say in it. That goes to the Service Commission, who is not geared to sit down and assess performance on a day-to-day basis. Any questions, gentlemen?
No, thank you, caller. But thank you very much. I think we will respond off air.
Yeah, the caller makes an important point. I mean, we've said it before, but transparency. So his example, the annual administrative reports. The irony is right now the TTPS might be the one arm in the government that might be doing the most. It might not be enough, but they're doing more than the rest of the government I could see about trying to be transparent.
Did you just say that TTPS is one arm of the government?
Well, it is the one arm of the government that I think is doing the most with regards to trying to be transparent.
The TTPS is one arm of the government?
Sorry. Well, yes, as a state entity, not as a political entity.
Keaton, Sean, let me just quickly make this point. We speak about reporting. I remember when I went to the National Lotteries Control Board as the chairman, the board had not been audited for 4 or 5 years. When I left there, I left files that high, 18 inches high, where I had been in constant communication with the Auditor General, under whose jurisdiction the auditing of the board was the legal frame setup. When I couldn't take it no more, I wrote to her in consultation with the line minister. I don't know if it reached Mrs. Teixeira Nunez's desk at that time, but I sought permission to go ahead, tender for a firm to audit, which I did, only to be told 2 years later when the Auditor General was good and ready for me, listen, you see that audit you do there? That really don't matter. We starting all over again.
Oh my God.
That is what you have. So here I am trying to ensure that the law is carried out. Now, it isn't her fault. This country has added more and more responsibilities to the Office of the Auditor General without, as it were, adding the budget and expanding the office. If, given the number of state enterprises that have to report to her for auditing, she really should be running about 4 big auditing firms, you know.
Well, but Louis, do you see that now the proposed party financing bill also wants to put that Auditor General on the hook for it?
Wonderful.
Which means the politicians want it, so in fact it won't be done.
Wonderful.
Until 10 or 15 years later.
But gentlemen, I do apologize for cutting you. We have a caller waiting on the line from St. James.
Yeah.
Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I am calling, in a sort of frustrated frame of mind. We have
You are not alone.
all group committees and so knowing what the problem or problems are, how to stop it. My question is, where and when do we start? If you tell me at the top not, apparently they're not interested. So where
and when and how do we go about making this change? That is my frustration.
Thank you very much, caller from St. James. I don't know if
You-
anyone has an answer to
I
that
have an
question.
answer to that.
We
I
have,
have an
we,
answer
we
to
have a
that.
few answers to that.
I also have a sort of answer
We
to
have
that.
three
I'm
answers
sure
to that.
it's one that Tim may have too.
The answer is that we have to begin to hold people who sit in office accountable. Now, many people will believe the answer is that we form a political party and change. That is also the answer. But we, the people, have got to demand performance from those who are paid to perform. We don't do that.
So then, how much is it? You're saying
But how
that,
do you do
a
it?
political party for change, that's part of it, but how much of it as well is citizens and we the people having to change our mindsets and our way of thinking?
That is all part of the process. Let me tell you where we are in Trinidad. People say nothing and do nothing out of fear that if they need support, whether it's they're going to legally tender for a contract, whether they are going to legally need to get an approval, whether they are legally going to, that somebody is going to step in their way and put a spanner and pressure them and punish them. We as a citizen, let me say to you, whenever I think about Trinidad, I think about that movie, Moses, where the Pharaoh just had all these Israelites in the fields working day and night to build pyramids and what have you, with whips on our backs. We have whips on our backs, but it is not a physical whip. It is a whip of fear that if we do not conform, we will be punished.
Yeah.
That's
Karen.
where we are.
Absolutely correct in that assessment. And I think it may have been there all along before, but it is absolutely the case now. And people are afraid. Those who want the carrot, want the consultancy, who want their law firms to get the government business, because that's the only person doing business now that is worth anything, they have to keep their mouth shut. But what I think the answer is what every country did. You have to go and educate people. It's not a party educating. You know, if at the end of the day someone decides they want to form a party out of it because they feel they have support, should not be the determining factor. What we should do is use the opportunity to educate people, because that's what every other successful leader, whether it was Martin Luther King, whether it was Mahatma Gandhi, whoever you want to call, they were successful by spreading the message. And we can do it as we're doing it virtually. We can do it by having town meetings. We can do it without giving up and ensuring that we have a message to the people so that at the end of the day, they have eureka moments. You understand? But wait now. Are we really being served by our government, or are we really just being as a source of cheap labor for 5 or 10% whom the government favors, and are we afraid to speak out? Because that is what it is. I am afraid to speak out too.
Before you go to the caller, I want to say to you, this challenge is not only in the public service, you know. If you want to see a doctor of some reputation in this country, to get to see that doctor, sometimes you are prepared to pay extra to see the doctor, you know. Now, if the public health system in this country, given the expenditure and the monies we have spent on it over the last 60 years, if the public health system was working like the public health system in Holland or in other sophisticated Scandinavian countries, or like Germany, if it was working like that, we wouldn't have doctors being tin gods in this country.
Oh, we do have a caller on the line with us. Very interesting point, actually. Unfortunately, we don't have much time to elaborate further, but I'd like to at some point. We have a caller on the line with us, final caller of the morning from Tobago. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm so disappointed sometimes in the citizens of, I shouldn't say Trinidad, of Trinidad. You see, there are so many intelligent people in Trinidad. We know what the problem is, but we're not addressing the problem. What is the problem is we continue to elect the same people time and time again and expect a different result. Tobago tried their hand at it. They elect a totally different regime. What happened to the people in Trinidad?
Well, maybe Trinidad needs to take a
My
learning
problem
lesson.
is that they got a burner.
No,
and then
no.
afraid of change.
It's a little more difficult than that.
Well, thank you, caller. It goes to what my answer would have been. Where do we start? And I think that, Karen, your answer and Louis' answer is not mutually exclusive. It all comes back down, yes, to accountability. But then, how do we keep or make politicians accountable? You don't lock them up. Forget about that. That's not what matters to them. They could appeal, and wave their way out of it. You make them irrelevant because you vote them out. You educate the public. You get the voting base. You improve the political landscape. You vote them out.
I'm letting you respect that.
You have to start with, I think what Karen said, is a group of brave men and women willing to stand up. Not just brave, stand up for honest government. All right, and be held to account for that. Part of the problem, it started with to say there is a vindictiveness within the political sphere that will come home to hurt you when you do stand up. You have to be aware of that and be prepared to accept that. In fact, I think that Privy Council decision, if you read it, you will see. Here is the Privy Council in London recognizing that there is vindictiveness in our political system, and it bears fruit within the Chief Justice, within the Chief Magistrate, and therefore they must come to the conclusion that this is endemic to the country.
The sad part is this is almost like a bad Hollywood script. I mean, it is story writing 101. There's corruption. Somebody tries to deal with the corruption.
And then brave man come forward.
So they're vindictive against him to get him to go away. But there's fundamental truth there. That's just how it works. And to break the cycle, you have to figure out how to overcome that.
Brave men and women have to stand up.
At the risk of being the water in the fire, let me say to you all, we came to talk about the Commissioner of Police, but you understand why the criteria as published cannot work in our best interest. Because all these issues raised by this very experienced group of people explains to me, if I didn't understand it before, why this criteria as published time and time again, it's cost a lot of money to publish this, cannot work.
That's playing Dolly House, Louis.
You're talking about, when I look at the criteria, they ask any of the following. So you have to have experience and certification. Law, criminal justice, criminology, police service management, any other key relevant degrees. How are we weighting that out of 100%? Will we say police service management will get 50? Will we say, in selecting the person, I really want to say to you that I really hope the Police Service Commission, if you are listening, and I know you are listening because all of you are the finest minds, Dr. Rowley could have found it to put on this and assemble this thing. You can't be dotish. You can't be stupid. Go back, look at this. But even if you don't change it, I'm asking you please to understand the selection of a commissioner of police at this time requires that you find the most brilliant man. I'm not saying the most political man. I'm not saying that you find the most contentious man, the most difficult man to deal with. I am saying find the most brilliant person. A brilliant person is a person who knows how to say left or right and make assessments.
Well, Mr. Leasing, I'm going to have to end it there. Fortunately, that's all the time we have for this morning's discussion. As we conclude, a great discussion, but bear in mind also the situation that we're facing today into tomorrow. So I plead with you to be prepared, get prepared, and of course, secure yourself and your personal belongings. But Ms. Karen Yeshishara, thank you very much once more for joining us on Talking Points. Always a pleasure to see you and to have you here.
Yes.
Mr. Lee
Thanks
Singh.
for having me as usual, and I was keeping some very good company there, I have to say. Apart, of course, from Keaton and Sean, that goes without saying.
Don't forget it, Karen. Don't forget it.
Mr. Lee
I
Singh, it's a
shan't, I
pleasure
shan't.
to have you once more on the program. Thank you for joining us and for your contribution.
Many thanks.
And Mr. Hamel-Smith, I think this is the first time you're joining us on this program, but please let it not be the last. You're always welcome here, and we always look forward to the discussion.
Well, I'll wait for Louis' invite. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
You see, Sean, our invite's not good enough.
You see, it's who you know. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. Good people. Oh no. Oh no. But I
we come full circle, right?
We come full circle. I'll just like to close by saying you need to be more involved in your country if you want to see it fixed. You can't just wait for somebody to do it for you.
Certainly. Well, we can advocate for change, but it's all part of change in ourselves as well. That will be a part of the bigger picture at the end of the day. And I always plead for that, especially to the youth here in Trinidad and Tobago. But nevertheless, today is a good day to be prepared. And we'll see you again, hopefully, tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
Thank you.